Well, this game recently came out. Ghost of Tsushima, I feel is really, really, really unique. It has its own like unique combat system. It's like a weird mix of Sekiro and like Dark Souls, but it's like its own little section. I think it's so cool how they made like the environment of the game. How there is like very minimal UI. Like the easily the best thing about the game, the graphics and the environment. Just like riding down a hill with like cherry blossoms. I'm a huge like anime fan, so I'm a weeb. So when I see cherry blossoms, I'm really like, oh, this is cool. So riding down like a tall grass hill with cherry blossoms like flowing behind me, and I'm like having my sword out and just like slicing people. It was like so cool, and I think it's so unique because the UI system. There's no mini map. There's no compass. The way you know where you're going is you swipe up on the the controller pad, and the wind blows and tells you where you're going, where you're supposed to go. And there's so many like small things that you see while you're exploring that you could check out. Be like, oh wait, I see some smoke over there. Let me go over there and see what it is. And you find out it's like a random like world event that's happening. It's just so intricate, and the world is so big and the game is so beautiful. I feel like it's probably one of the best newer games, the most unique newer games that I played.
The most unique game that I've seen lately, recent years, is Greece, because it's pretty much like it's not much gameplay per se. It's more like a storyboard, but like it's just beautiful artwork and music, and that is where, like, I would argue that this game is essentially, it was just created to be an interactive piece of art, but that it portrays something. So like you see that a lot in like in certain museums, they try to take you from point A to point B, like follow these arrows, and then you'll get to the whole piece of work. Well, Greece is kind of like that in the sense that, like you start here and you just traveling along this story of as she said, personal loss and grief, and it's just one beautiful piece of artwork after another until you get to the end.
Okay, so I'm gonna say 3 games, and they're all unique in their own genre. All right, so first I'll go with Minecraft, because let's be real, it's defined a generation. It's still going strong, and it's just like there's like the closest thing to a Minecraft is Roblox, and that's not they're not doing the same thing. Let's be honest here. The second one would be PlanetSide 2, which is basically a massive combined arms, where everyone logs onto a server, and there are 4 continents. Each continent can support up to 1,000 people at one time. And it's basically just like a bunch of base caps. And it sounds like it could get boring, but it really doesn't, because when you're running across the field with a bunch of tanks next to you, and there are aircraft dogfighting, and there's 2 giant carriers above each other just launching interceptors, and there's over 96 people on each side slamming into each other for like an hour, it's definitely unique. It's not like closest comes is Battlefield, and it just doesn't scratch the same itch because there's just more people. And then my final, I'm basically the StarCraft guy. StarCraft's unique to me because it's just like the best 1v1 competitive esport out there. It's no match is exactly the same. Like you watch Hearthstone, it's like, yeah, well, the decks are all different, but not really. But StarCraft, every player, even when they're going for the same strategy, it still has their own unique brand. Like one player will do a fast expansion, so they get their second base up quicker, before they do a timing attack, while other people will just do the timing attack. It's like all building placements are unique. I can't do it justice, but there is no single game that is exactly the same.
So I'd say the most unique game that I've ever played is Wolf Among Us, because it's a game that changes based on your answers and your decisions. That's just not a game like that I've normally played. And it was just so much fun to go through it and like make decisions, and knowing that whatever decision I make right now could change the course of the rest of the game, which is like super stressful. And especially because like I was trying to make decisions as who I am, but like sometimes I was like, maybe I should do it another way and see what happens. Like if I'm actually mean for once, like see what actually is going to happen. And I really want to replay it sometime and see like if I just do the opposite of what my instincts are, to see like what happens with the game, because it's just so cool that that's something that you can do with that game.
I've played through the first 3 Yakuza games recently. Nothing really stands out when you really learn the concept of it, but when you play it, it just becomes this. It's almost like a fever dream once you learn about it and once you play it. There's so many like side missions and so many like activities you can do in the game. Like you play as a Yakuza, like a Yakuza gangster, or not Yakuza gangster, but a Yakuza member, and it's just, you kind of in the first game you kind of are just a normal Yakuza member where you just go around shaking people down and stuff. But then as the story progresses, the main character grows a lot, and he becomes more mature, and he starts to like explore the town that he's in. Like he somehow gets in real estate somehow. And there's a lot of weird side stories where it's literally just him helping out with a bunch of these civilians of Japan's just weird tasks, and it's very charming. Honestly, it's a very charming game.
For that one, I would probably just say Ori and the Will of the Wisps, or Blind Forest, whichever one you played first, or whatever. It's just the way that you have to approach using all the different abilities to get to one part of the map and unlock all the other ones and progress in the storyline. And the fact that there's like different abilities that you can use, and you don't necessarily have to use the new ability that you unlock, but it in the end it proves itself to be more useful. But just the way that the game is designed, that you have to use all these different elements and combine different aspects of everything to finally get to the end of the game. It's just, I haven't really experienced another game that's been like that.
I feel like one of the first really unique games that I played was a Valve game. It was I played Portal 2 on release whenever that came out on the Xbox 360, and that was definitely the most unique game I'd ever played at that point, because before that I was just playing like PS2 games that were like just single player experiences, kind of run of the mill kind of stuff. And then I played Xbox 360 games, which was like Halo, and that was like an extremely unique experience for me. But it was very much like in the sci-fi genre that I understood. Like it was like, it's aliens, it's guys in power armor, and I'm like, I love this. But Portal 2 was amazing because it was a world that was so contained in a laboratory, a literal laboratory where the experience would take place, where despite it being so contained, it was such a massive universe of just like potential. Or at least I just felt that, because after playing the game, I was like just starstruck at just how much fun I had been having, just like figuring out all the puzzles and stuff. And it wasn't until after the game that I figured out that like Portal was actually also connected to the Half-Life universe. And I kind of go back and forth with actually like liking that theory, because I don't know, I feel like Shell being like released into the wild and she just goes straight into a combine experience or something like that. She goes to like a checkpoint or whatever. I don't know. I feel like that'd be a weird experience to play in a Portal game. You know, if it's like a continuation, like I wouldn't like to see Shell going to meet up with like Gordon Freeman or something like that.
You guys may know about Nier Automata recently that just came out, and that's a very unique game. But like the game before it, which is Nier 1, which not a lot of people heard of at the time, was like that was I saw like a video on it. And I saw like the way like the bosses were like played out, and I was like, that was like really tight. So I bought it, and like the more and more I played it, like there was like a bunch of like unique ideas that they have in there. You know, all of them didn't like meshed well together, but like they had like a bunch of different unique ideas that I feel like they were like truly unique, and like a bunch of stuff like I'd never seen in the game before. Yeah, like the combat is kind of like whatever, but like the story, the puzzles, and like the small little details that they did like along the journey was like very neat and very very unique. It was like a very different experience than what I've played before.
The most unique game is D&D, because it literally is created as you go. I think a good DM is going to have a rough structure of how the story can go and how the game can go, while allowing for the players to really build it, right? So, and I think it's gonna it looks different every time, right? And there is no script, there is no there's no set path. When you play video games, and I would go back to Oblivion. I think Oblivion is one of the most unique games simply because of the character customization that you have. I like sandbox games because you can go and do whatever you want, right? And then when you finally do the main storyline and you're overpowered and it's not much of a challenge, it's kind of fun. Yeah, but I think D&D is the most unique game, and it's different every time you get together, right? There's not there are storylines that have been written in books of stories for D&D, and quite literally, there is not going to be two groups of players that play it the same way. There are so many different iterations because it's as unique as the people playing the game.
The most unique game I've definitely ever played or seen is Overlord. Not sure if you're familiar with that game, but my brother has kind of a crude sense of games, and he decided to pick up this game called Overlord, where basically you are the overlord of minions, and you use these minions to like complete your tasks in the campaign. So there's like 4 different types of minions. There's like fire, ice, fighter, and poison minions, I think, and they were like each good at different things, but like it was a really weird game, and like I'm guessing the creators really messed up when they were making it, but it was kind of one of those games that was just really awesome just because it's like no one ever does that in real life. Like you can't just like send minions at like villagers and stuff and like pillage stuff. So it's kind of weird, but it was a pretty good game just to kind of mess around and not do normal stuff, I guess.
The most unique game I've ever played to date is probably Undertale. And I've heard a lot of people like talk bad stuff about Undertale, but it's really people who just haven't played it and people who base it off of what other people say, like memes and stuff like that, and are like, oh, this game's stupid, or they base it off of the fandom, and you can't base a game off of that. And so when I played it for the first time, I was like blown away by how well made it was. The designs, the music, the characters, the story, everything about it just blew away my expectations, and I fell in love with it instantly. Toby Fox, a god. That's all I have to say. He did so well, and I couldn't believe what I was doing. Like the gaming, like the actual like play style was really simple, and like you got so like lost in how pretty it was. He put so much time and effort into the stages, into like all the background design. I don't think I've ever seen a game do that in a long time. Like maybe you have, maybe you haven't, but like I think personally to me, that really stuck out to me, and I can play it over and over and over again without getting tired of it.
There was this old Xbox game that I used to play, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. I think it was Fusion Frenzy. And I just remember playing this game where it was like kind of like a Mario Party style game, but it was different than just playing the standard like Mario Party type of games. And I just remember having a blast playing with my friends, playing Fusion Frenzy on the first Xbox. and it was just it was different than your typical party games that you would play especially during that time when there was only one, and it was Mario Party. So you were either playing Mario Party or you weren't playing anything. And then Fusion Frenzy came out, and I loved playing that game.
Probably Rocket League. I want to say Rocket League. It's just, it combines, you know, the soccer with like card games, and it's just like such a weird but cool synthesis of like all of my favorite things. Like I love driving. I love car games like Project Cars, Forza. Like I love all that stuff. And I love sports games like FIFA and Madden and 2K. So it's like such a cool little like combination and synthesis of everything that when I first played it, I'm like, this, I don't know if I could ever like play this consistently, but it's really fun to mess around with. So that's probably the most unique game I ever played. And I definitely I support people that have the skill to play it on such a high level, because that's crazy, the kind of coordination you have to have.
Like, this is a really interesting question because in current gaming, it's really hard for game developers to create a new concept for a game because they're literally just building off of past iterations. I think going back to like N64, the Ocarina of Time, Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time, was a super unique concept because it really started the open world thing that literally every game on the planet does now, like Assassin's Creed, Horizon Zero Dawn. Like all these games are built off of what Ocarina of Time did in the 90s. And so like that combined with the time travel aspect of like being in two different worlds was like a really, really cool, unique experience for a game that was like really ahead of its time, I think.
You know, it might be the zombies game mode from Call of Duty. I mean, it is just a simple, if you look at it in most naive way, like just looking at it super plain, it's just a tower defense, and you're the tower. You're just protecting yourself from these waves of assets. the zombies, the perks, the care that the company puts into this game mode, and the power of the community. I made a lot of friends out of it. Whether I'm still friends with them now or that we've moved on, there's just something about it, and it may not be entirely the game itself. I mean, as interesting as it was with Pack-a-Punching your weapon and being able to do Easter eggs, which was just this whole, it was like this genre within the game itself. It was honestly, like, during the height of the zombies community, it was probably one of the most fulfilling years in video games that I've ever had. Sad to say that it's over now, but it's probably more the community than the game itself that made it so amazing, because it wasn't like an MW2 lobby. If you went into an online match, you were getting cussed out for not seeing someone like on the other side of the map or whatever. Anytime you just joined a random lobby, it was like, all right, here we go. And then everyone just melded for however long you survived. Some people get mad, but that's because they're just bad. But yeah, I think just the zombies game mode from the Call of Duty Treyarch line of games.
Before I say what I feel is the most unique game I've ever played, I think it's very important to point out that this game has very real trigger warnings on it, and that the game is not for the faint of heart. It's not for the faint of heart is the wrong way to say it. It's got some like heavy stuff in it. The trigger warnings are real. But I would say for the most unique game I've ever played, I would say Doki Doki Literature Club. I guess it came out in 2018, I think, a couple of years ago, but I'd never heard of it. And then, at the end of the year, all the different websites put out their top 10 games of the year and top 10 indie game and, major studio game and all that kind of stuff. And I typically have heard of all those games at that point in time, but this one kept popping up everywhere. Doki Doki Literature Club. And if you look up the picture, you just see it's like a interactive anime story type thing set in a school. It's a free game on Steam, at least it was back then. And every review said, this is an amazing game, an amazing experience. The trigger warning is real. I can't tell you anything about it though, which is like some good marketing, you know? But so I checked it out. I remember my wife had to work all day one Saturday. From what I had read, it takes like to fully experience the story, like between 8 and 10 hours. So I was like, all right, I'm up early on a Saturday. I'm just gonna go through this. Was chatting with some friends in Discord, like giving them updates on what was happening, all that kind of stuff, and it was just an amazing experience. Like, I can't really explain it, not just from a spoilers point of view, but like, if you do ever play it, once you complete it, look up what you should do next, because that's where it gets really interesting. I don't want to say, but like the next time you play it, and it's again still in that 8 to 10 hours. It's not a long game, but that's where it really became like, oh. Initially, it was like, oh, this is kind of crazy, this is kind of cool, but then it was like, oh, this is dope. Like, this is like really, really cool. So yeah, Doki Doki Literature Club is what I would say is the most unique game I've ever played.